Okay, we are now being recorded.
Okay. How you doing? Thank you for joining the Indigenous Commission meeting today. It is September 4th, 2025 at 11:02 a.m. Let me find the agenda.
And while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and do roll call.
Okay.
All right. Commissioner Cuddy-Eye?
Present.
Commissioner Curley? And Co-Chair Lance is here.
Yes.
And Co-Chair Zavala is excused absence. And then Commissioner Francis?
Here.
And then Commissioner Hosky?
Here.
Commissioner Moana?
Here.
Commissioner Marks?
Here.
Commissioner Marshall? I don't see her. All right. She's had confirmed to be here, so she might still be getting on in a few minutes. All right, back to you, Co-Chair.
Got it. Would anybody like to read the land acknowledgement for us? Any volunteers?
I will. This is Commissioner Francis. As soon as I get a chance to open it up here. Okay.
Thank you.
It says, the Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's Indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to Indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you for reading that. Move on to item 3, public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission on any subject within their jurisdiction that is not scheduled before the commission on that day. Due to open meeting laws, the commission cannot discuss or act on items presented during this portion of the agenda. To address the commission on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time the item is heard. Maximum 3 minutes per individual. Doesn't look like we have anybody from the public there, or maybe we do.
If you do, then go ahead and raise your hand. All right. And we also at this time would like to welcome some of our guests here, our presenters. And then also we have our Jenna, who's always attending our meetings. And then also Sheldon Yazzie, who's here with us as well. Thank you very much for being here. Back to you, Co-Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, we got some approval of minutes. We need to approve the minutes on June 13th, 2025, the retreat minutes. Need a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll motion.
Okay. Is that Commissioner Moana?
Yeah, sorry. I'll motion.
Got it. Can I get a second?
I second that. This is Commissioner Hosky.
Okay, thank you. We need to approve the minutes as a whole. Everybody say aye, please.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Any opposed?
Any opposed? Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you. We'll move on to general business. Item 5, follow-up conversation on developing mitigation for the proposed demolition of the former municipal building at 19 West Birch Avenue, Flagstaff, Arizona. Community Development Senior Planner Lauren Clementino will provide introductions Caitlin Stewart, co-owner and director of Cornerstone Environmental Consulting LLC, will present the relevant findings of their study, phase 1, historic resource study for 19 West Birch Avenue in Flagstaff, and potential options for mitigation. The purpose of the discussion will be to select mitigation options to recommend to the Heritage Preservation Commission. Great. All right. Mrs. Clementino, or Miss Clementino, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Co-Chair Lance. And, thank you everyone for having me back at another meeting. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So just to recap where we were at last time, I came and sort of introduced the issue. We talked a little bit about the findings of the phase 1 cultural resource study for the former City Hall, Police, Fire Station, Courthouse at 19 West Birch Avenue. And I've invited Caitlin Stewart to join me today, who's going to give a little more in-depth overview of the findings of that report. And then just a reminder on exactly what we were asking. So the Heritage Preservation Commission has reviewed and accepted this report, but mitigation for the proposed major impact of demolition to this building is still they had selected some mitigation measures, but one was still to be developed, and that would be, and they asked to develop that in communication with the Indigenous Commission, and that is to interpretive mitigation to mitigate the impacts as related to the significant Native American civil rights history associated with this building. So Caitlin is going to I'll let Caitlin go into more detail about the history and some ideas that Cornerstone has for interpretive mitigation. I also did share with Caitlin the notes I took from the last meeting with the ideas that you presented then. So she has that information. And then, and as stated in the agenda, the idea today is, hopefully to select some ideas, and then Caitlin and I can take them back to the Heritage Preservation Commission, or if you'd like, we could also, choose a representative from this commission to go and present with us to the Heritage Preservation Commission as well. And if there are no immediate questions, I will turn things over to Caitlin. And thank you, Caitlin, for joining me today.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. We don't always get a lot of opportunities for cooperation in any field, but ours as well. So my plan was I'll give you a little bit of exactly what we found when we were looking through the building and how we got there. I actually had a meeting with the Hilton Design Committee, and they presented some things that aren't considered mitigation that they were already planning on incorporating, but I feel like everyone might want to have a say in that as well. But so when we first started looking at the City Hall, there was a lot of focus on, okay, this has, it's got to be important just because it's everyday business, right? Like people are paying their water bills there, they're going there, people are working there every day. It's where the municipal court was, the police department, the fire department. Unfortunately, the City Hall, as it was a City Hall, was a little bit different than, say, the one we have now. There were 4 government buildings, while this held the offices for fire and the police department. A lot of the work got done outside of it. So we didn't find too much. Obviously, things were going on in Flagstaff at the time, but there wasn't so much connected with the City Hall. When we started looking into social movements, the big thing that came up was the All Indian Powwow. In 1972, I think, there was a disruption, as it was called, at the All Indian Powwow, which had happened for about 40 years, almost at that point, where a group, 7 people from the American Indian movement came on stage, took the microphone from someone, and suggested to the dancers that they stop dancing. There was no violence. It was probably a minute or two long. But this minute or two led to some pretty big changes for Flagstaff in general. Those individuals who several of them ended up being very important in the AIM movements in other places. But they were arrested and they were held in 1972 on $25,000 bail for a misdemeanor. Originally, they were arrested for felony charges, saying that they assaulted the individual who had the microphone at the time, which is obviously was a push to begin with. But the $25,000 bail for a misdemeanor brought up the fact that while this was really public and it was meant to be retribution, this was happening not just to these protesters. There was some interesting, stories, things like somebody would get a traffic violation and the police would pull them over and be like, you need $5 to pay your bail, or, or we're going to arrest you and take you to jail. And so they'd try to get $5 together, they'd get $4.60, and they would hold them in jail for weeks until somebody would come up with that other 40 cents. But again, this was only happening almost exclusively to the Indigenous community. And they were stating, the police department, or not just the police department, the city, all of the agencies behind this were stating that it was just because a lot of them were living on the reservation, they wouldn't be able to have them show up for $5. So what was happening is that these individuals were being held for $25,000. They eventually get released. They were held for 30 days. They never paid the money, obviously, who has over $100,000 at that time just sitting around for bail. But those individuals went down to Phoenix and they met with the Arizona Advisory Commission for the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. And they started touring Arizona, holding public meetings to talk about not just the bail, but any types of obvious discrimination that was happening. And this led to two primary studies. The ACLU got involved and the Advisory Commission for Civil Rights got involved. And they started monitoring Flagstaff. And what I mean by that is they started monitoring that city hall. They had people at every one of the municipal court cases, went through every arrest for 3 straight months, which is not long enough, but it was long enough to get the picture. What they found was that the Indigenous community was being held in jail for crimes that would never have held any jail time. The guilty rate among the Indigenous community was almost 95%. And the reason for this was because there was oftentimes no translators. They would describe what was, the court process to them in groups. A lot of times people didn't understand why they were even there. And on top of that, they were disproportionately being arrested, which is not necessarily a surprise, as that is still something the ACLU is investigating in Flagstaff right now. But at that time, it was 46% of individuals in Flagstaff that were being held in jail were Indigenous, and they only represented about 5% of the population. So it's a huge disparity. Some other things that came out of it was that they found out that none of the judges or magistrates or attorneys in Flagstaff had any legal training, that were the public defenders who were supposed to be representing these individuals. The 3 judges who were at that city hall for about 30 years, and the previous one, and I think they all retired before we moved into the new one. But yeah, had no legal training of any kind, which was why they thought these mass arraignments with no interpreters were valid, probably part of it. And on top of that, they also found things that, like, the Indigenous community was disproportionately not allowed to be on juries. So even in cases where an Indigenous member might be going in front of a jury for a legitimate crime, there is no representation and, not being judged by your peers. So these studies came out, and they did it for places like Ajo, Winslow as well, but they decided to focus on Flagstaff because they said that it was the best example of what was happening in all of Arizona in these supposed border towns that are near reservations. So I don't think that's a bit limiting, but they decided that Flagstaff was the best representation of that, so they used them as the example. And in particular, they used these AIM arrests, the disproportionate bail, and they also mentioned police brutality, though that wasn't defined in the ACLU report as what they meant, but it was designated as the only major case of police brutality in Arizona at the time, despite these other, looking at these other towns. So following that, there was a couple of court cases from some Indigenous members trying to fight exactly some of these things that are happening, disproportionate bail. And the federal court threw it out, sort of. They said they threw it out, but they said that the city of Flagstaff, in particular, the individuals at this building, needed to change their methods, meaning you couldn't hold somebody in jail for an offense that carried no jail time. Bail had to be standardized. And if they agreed to do that, within 6 months, they would throw out the case against the city of Flagstaff. They did throw it out. There was some occasional legal changes, but nothing put on the books. So they skirted the issue. But it was the first time that in writing in Flagstaff that this type of discrimination was put in the papers and people had to respond to it. And as we all know, that the actions have not necessarily changed entirely, but it was the first public face of these problems. And it made national news. So when we presented this to the Heritage Preservation Commission, we stated that this protest, this AIM protest, but this bigger period of recognition was why the building was important. Not because it was a city hall. We did say it was locally important for architecture because they used the Malpai, but this is what we would like to see the mitigation for, and this is what we would like to see the building. We would like to make it not about the building and make sure that this history gets a bit more of the attention, right? If the building was the first time that it got put into the public eye, we'd like to see the building get put back into the public eye for the same reason. So I can give you some ideas about what we had, but does anyone have any questions about the history? I know I'm giving you kind of a brief one because I figured you didn't want me to go right through my PowerPoint. I could read off that, but no. So some ideas, I read what Lauren gave me, and it was somebody had mentioned a mural, and somebody had mentioned like a QR code type of where people could add oral histories or statements or personal experiences. I also reached out to Travis Pinn that Lauren got me in contact with, and I think we're going to try to, not necessarily as part of mitigation, but we did so much research on this that is really relevant to HistoryMap that we're going to try to do something cooperatively to assist with that. So QR code history might be useful in to incorporate in his story map and this project. When I had the design meeting with the Hilton, they had some things they were already planning on incorporating into the building. They haven't decided anything, but they mentioned two things that I figured I would let you know about. One, the graduate motto. So this type of Hilton, it's just for university towns. They tend to incorporate a lot of local history. It's just how they market themselves. And their motto is "We are all students," I think. Hopefully that's correct. And they want to put that on the building, and they want to put it in all of the local Indigenous languages as well. On the entry, like right at the entry point. They also were talking to an artist in town who does an Indigenous artist who does skateboard art on skateboards. First I heard about it, but sounds cool. And going to do some displays and potentially rotating Indigenous art in the lobby. But this is more part of, how they market their hotel, not necessarily mitigation, but I thought it might be something that interested you to know. I think the big one that we had suggested, and I had talked to Lauren about, that I really like, doesn't mean anything though, is the idea of a walking tour. We could incorporate the QR codes. And what I mean by that is, so the Indian powwow obviously was housed at the city park. So starting at Thorpe Park, incorporating where some of these activities happened and giving some history and some opportunities, maybe through the QR system, for people to contribute. Someone, if you have a question, go ahead. I would love to hear it because I'm just rambling.
I just had a quick question. I was wondering who that Indigenous author was, if you had that name.
I don't, but I
Okay.
will get it for you because I did ask her. She just has to email me back.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned, they hadn't solidified it, but we had it this morning. So they had these ideas. But yeah, I'll find out who the artist is specifically. So the walking tour, what I was thinking would be having something start at like Thorpe, going by the old city hall, maybe by the county courthouse. And focusing on the modern and historic Indigenous community and what that experience has been like, which I can't write that up, but I can give opportunities for people to present that, I suppose. But I think that's kind of a neat idea because it's interactive. So those were that was my big idea, or my best idea, I suppose. So I'm curious what the Indigenous Commission would like to see. Because just because I have an idea doesn't mean it's a good one. Go ahead.
Sorry, I did have another question.
Yeah.
Who, for those walking tours, who would be giving those tours?
So I was thinking more of a self-guided tour, so that people could go at any time. It would,
Okay.
yeah, the idea of always being available.
Yeah, similar to the Route 66 tour downtown
Yeah.
using code. Okay.
Yeah, and I know the commissioner also mentioned visiting schools. I think that should definitely. I personally think that that's a great opportunity, and we're happy to do that or help someone else do that. To give a little background, or to provide this history and in context of the general feelings at the time.
Chair Lance, this is Councilmember Matthews. Can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I missed the last meeting, so I'm catching up on this conversation, but just in hearing the ideas and the possibilities, QR codes, we are going to that a lot. You know, we have the art that's over by the Liz Archuleta Park, but also I'm such a visual. I'm sure we have pictures of the building when it was City Hall and a jail. And I didn't hear this specifically from you, so I just wanted to put it out there, and maybe it's already something the Hilton franchise is looking at, but having something that people can see without being prompted to do a QR code, to see a picture of the jail and to have a story in a big poster that kind of describes just how, you know, what was happening back then, and how just everything that you just shared with us, the history of what was happening to our Indigenous community back there, and how significant it was to that jail at the time and the injustices and stuff. I think it needs to also just be in print so that other people that may not be so inclined to scan a QR code, it can catch their eye, and you know, we don't want that history to be forgotten, because you know, it's such a terrible history, but it is important to understanding, you know, what our Indigenous neighbors have gone through. I think that would be, just in my opinion, a really good thing to have as a reminder of what, you know, what's gone on in our city.
Yeah, and I think that that is, yeah, when I say the QR codes, I guess I'm not being as linear as I'd like. The QR codes would be an opportunity to allow people to get more information or contribute. But ideally, yes, the Hilton plans on putting up photos of the building and a little bit of history. And I think I would agree on the walking tour if there's a way. And I think that just gets down to logistics, right? Like, what could we actually do at Thorpe that wouldn't be intrusive or be allowed? But yeah, I agree that people need the visual right there too, and they need the story right there. I'm old enough that I like the idea of the QR code as a contributor, but not as the major way I get at my information.
And Caitlin, I would, if I could just jump in, I would add, I think that's how I would see it too, like a walking tour, that there would be, you know, maybe a series of interpretive signs or, you know, with information, and then you could scan the QR code to do more. And we did also invite Amy Hagan here from Parks, so that way someone from Parks was included in the discussion if we did, you know, want to talk about having additional signage at Thorpe, you know, to connect things. So maybe, you know, the tour you could see it at Hilton and then, you know, take the walk on over to Thorpe.
Yeah, I think there needs to be stops though, with an explanation that even people passing by, even if they don't know about the walking tour, can still get a little bit from.
Hi, Caitlin. This is Commissioner Lance. Just wanted to comment, like if somebody wanted to add some information or wanted to, how would they go about that? Would they contact you, or is there
Yeah, please contact me.
Who would that be?
I think
Okay.
at this stage, until there is, you know, something formalized like the walking tour, I mean, at some point that will be, you know, be a different thing. But if anybody has any information now, I would love to incorporate it. So.
And I think, and that
just like, you know, being, sorry, me being a resident here for, I was just saying that I've talked to family members who've been around for a long time, and, you know, just talking with them about what you're doing here, you know, they might want to just share some info that they've had or experienced, or even nowadays, like it's a different experience, you know, for the most part, you know, those of us who live here, you know, we don't have to deal with that as much anymore, the discrimination and stuff. But I know some of the family members that I have that are here, they went to high school here, and, you know, Flag High in the 70s, 80s and stuff like that, you know. So if they wanted to add, that's why I was asking.
Yeah,
That's
and they
all.
can
Thanks.
contact me directly and we can find a way to incorporate that. One of the biggest, we found a lot of this information through newspaper articles, things like that. The reason is because all of the records at the city hall were were destroyed during a flood, almost all of them. So we couldn't even comb through arrest records, court cases, anything like that. And they're also not unexpected, but very unfortunate. We did find some established oral histories that address this, but there just isn't enough documented. So this is definitely an opportunity, and I will make sure that it gets incorporated in any way we can.
It looks like Ms. Hagan has her hand up.
Hi, good late morning, everyone, and thank you, Lauren and Rose, for the invitation to this. If it's an opportunity to throw out any potential unique ideas, when there's the aspect of what can be done along the building facade along Birch, and I think we have a really neat opportunity to, whether if it's implement some type of walking tour, and then the walking tour can connect to the current urban trail system that would take you right to the future Indigenous Community Cultural Center, or if there's an opportunity even for some educational and art pieces or whatever. I think we've got a really neat opportunity here when I just look visually on a map and look at this space at Birch and how you can quickly get to the Karen Cooper trail segment, and that would take you directly right to the Indigenous Community Cultural Center. I think that'd be neat. I know we've had some success in the South Side community with a walking tour, but that doesn't need to be the only thing. I think we can still develop some other neat aspects. So happy to toss out whatever those ideas are or whatever our options might be in some of these public spaces that we have existing today.
I think having it lead to the new building is a fantastic idea. Not one I hadn't considered because I haven't looked at the map yet. But yeah, no, I think that because that's the thing is that any walking tour has to have a place to start, and while we have a place to start, we don't have a place to end yet.
Absolutely. This brown line here is the existing current Foots alignment. And then I was trying to get it on one screen. Right down here would be East Birch Avenue. I'm happy to keep this up as people start to provide a vision for this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's if anybody has any other ideas of exactly other places, like we can talk about Thorpe. We have some options downtown because that's where a lot of the Indian powwow was done. So I'm sure we can incorporate some of those buildings. And then Thorpe, because it was the housing at the time. But getting it outside of downtown would also be great, especially if it's walkable.
Commissioner Halsky?
Looks like Commissioner Hosky has a question.
Yeah. Hi. I actually have a couple of things. I was thinking about inside the hotel when you have pictures and plaques and such of what about like a digital, like a TV screen who's showing a lot of the old footage from the first powwows, since there's a lot that I'm sure that NAU probably has in the archives. Just kind of have it like on a loop so people can actually see something, and then in case they don't want to use the QR code, because I know some people get really annoyed with QR codes, and especially older populations, like my parents, they don't like using QR codes, especially when they go to a restaurant and they need a QR code to look at the menu. They get really upset about that. But yeah, just like a little image thing. And then I was also wondering, besides, is there a place in Flagstaff website where there's an actual place where we can look up any kind of historical information, like state historical websites for Flagstaff in general, because the website for the heritage preservation is just the City of Flagstaff government website, like a general archive list of different projects and all of the ones that have been put into the historical context, and they could be on this website so that they can actually look into it more. I was also thinking about the mural on the outside of the building, because Flagstaff has a lot of really good murals and artists that they could probably put like something really nice outside the building. And last, so the whole thing with the whole AIM movement happened during the powwow, and a lot of people have talked about wanting to have these powwows come back. So if it was originally at Fort Park, with the opening of the hotel, they could just have another powwow and kind of like tie the two together, and then you start the walking tour there and it leads to the hotel. I don't know, just some thoughts that I was thinking about while everybody was talking. So yeah, I was wondering, is there any places where they can go, whether online or somewhere in the city, where they could look up any kind of information on other buildings that were viewed for the Preservation Society?
Well, there are a few different options. One, the Arizona Memory Project through the State Library is a big digital archive, and Commissioner Marks mentioned in the chat that the public library here has an archive of past powwows, and that everything has been digitized and lives in the AZ Memory Project online, and I just shared that in the chat. So that's one resource. There is information on all of the buildings that are listed in the National Register. Those, I believe it's the Library of Congress. They're all available for free online. So there are various resources. All of our studies like this one that the Cornerstone did, there isn't like a big repository online that the city has where all of those are available. They're all publicly available if you ask me for them. But is this one of the other asks for mitigation by the Heritage Preservation Commission for this project is to make these reports specifically publicly available, and they did request that they be given to the public libraries and possibly put on the city website as well, so that or maybe somewhere else like the Arizona Memory Project or Klein Library, and the Klein Library Special Collections also does have a lot of similar information digitized and available online. So that is another possibility for this project, is to make this one specifically available. I don't know if that answers your question, or if you have a follow-up.
That definitely does answer my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I remember the library, they have a lot of really good pictures. It's just not everybody knows to go there. I always have to tell people, you can go see the history, you just got to go look.
Yeah, and it's a long story, but we, yes, they are all physically at the library, and then they were digitized. And at one point they were on the library website, but then there was a big ADA audit, and it was not compliant. So now they all live on the Arizona Memory Project instead. So, and that's the link I threw in the chat. But that, is another resource that could be connected through a QR code for more information. And yes, Councilmember Matthews, I can share a copy of the report. It went out with the agenda, so I don't know if you received it or not, but the final report was shared. But if you didn't get it, I can send another copy.
Looks like our ex officio Diana Cudiai has a question.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the background to this. I have two questions first, and then I would like to make a comment after that. Is there a historical society type of group that is wanting to save this building as well? That's my first question. So yes or no?
I will say one is a city employee. I can't advocate one way or the other for that. So I can't speak on behalf of other groups in town. That's not the city's role in this project. But there are interested people in saving the building. However, at this point, we do need to still work on developing the mitigation and prepare for the proposed demolition. That hasn't come in for the actual action to demolish the building, hasn't come in for review yet. And I spoke about this a little bit at the last meeting. So for those who weren't there, just to recap, the way our Heritage Preservation Code works, mitigation needs for major impacts such as demolition needs to be proposed in the Phase 1 report. So the Phase 1 report evaluated the eligibility and significance of the building and found it significant for the reasons that Caitlin mentioned, and also proposed mitigation. And so that's why we're talking about it now, as that needs to be established regardless of what happened at this stage. We still do need to decide what the mitigation will be. The Heritage Preservation Commission has to vote on the mitigation and establish that now, and in advance of what may happen, because that's our code process. But the Heritage Preservation Commission will also later, in the Capri Inc., who is the developer of the project, later in their design phase. Right now, they've submitted a concept plan to the City of Flagstaff for review. That's very preliminary. It doesn't show any elevations, architectural, renderings of what the building's going to look like. It's more of like a floor site plan level. That has been returned by the city for corrections, and we're waiting on that to be resubmitted. Later, they will, once that's approved, they will submit a site plan with more information. And then in the site plan phase is when the design will go back to the Heritage Preservation Commission, both for a certificate of appropriateness that would include demolition of the existing building and improving the new site plan. So that is the process that's going to go forward. So the demolition hasn't been approved yet, but so I realize it is a little confusing, but we still need to develop the mitigation now, regardless of whether, what happens with the approvals. But I will say, even if the certificate of appropriateness is denied, there are still options for the project to continue. There is a certificate of economic hardship, could be a temporary delay of demolition, but there's still an avenue regardless of what happens for the project to move forward to demolition. And just, additional time and checks in place. So which is why we still need to do that now.
So you don't have a historical board type of society thing. You have a Heritage Preservation Commission. Are there any Indigenous member or people on that commission?
There are not. We do have a vacancy, though, for an at-large member. If you have anyone who would like to apply.
My comment is, I'm not from Flagstaff. I wasn't born and raised here. And I'm considered county right now. I've lived in here now for 25 years. But I have visited Flagstaff over the years, way back then. And I'm from New Mexico. I'm from the Four Corners area, and I lived in a border town, and the town was Farmington, New Mexico. And there were atrocities done there too back in the 70s that I witnessed. And so I understand the border town issues even to this day. As much as I love old buildings, I really do. I love the architecture. I don't go downtown often anymore just because it's just grown too much and it's just too much traffic. I don't deal with that. But I love old buildings. And not being from here, sometimes I just don't feel like my say-so has much to do with anything. But however, being on this commission, I just feel like sometimes groups come to a Indigenous group organizations to have us be a part of that other groups wanting something from us. I mean, I'm looking at it that way. That this is my perspective, and it may go against everything that everybody else is saying. And I hope that the old building will be saved. Not, and I am all for AIM, but there's not a lot of Native people that particularly cared for AIM also. I need to understand that. We had an AIM protest where I lived on a reservation in New Mexico, and it was great. I mean, I was all for that, but not a lot of people, Native people, are for that either. So, and I just feel that we are being asked to so that we can be part, not necessarily that involved with just saving an old building. I know it has that history with the AIM being held there, but that's happened in a lot of places as well. And I would love to have another powwow here, and I think it'll be very advantageous, so to speak, for the Native communities to come here for powwows that we haven't had in a long time. Because one, the Gathering of Nations in Albuquerque, this is going to be their last year. So people are looking around for other powwows now, so but then there's the local crowd community. We're gonna probably have to go through some sort of meetings again. So people will be complaining about traffic, where they're gonna park, that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm just kind of looking at it from an outsider point of view. And I would love to save it. I think a mural or something like that connects our Native Indigenous artists to it would be great. So that's it. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
I figured I could. Oh.
I was just going to say there are a few, historical societies. Again, they don't have a direct role in the project, but there is the state Arizona Historical Society, which is actually a state agency, and then locally there is a Northern Arizona Pioneers Historical Society group. So they do exist, and they are not a part of the city of Flagstaff. So if that, just to answer your question about do these groups exist and may they have interest? Yes, but again, not directly part of the role of the Heritage Preservation Commission in making this decision. And sorry, go ahead, Caitlin.
Oh, I was just going to say about the preservation of the building. There are some legitimate hurdles with that as well. The building floods every time it rains. Nothing can be kept downstairs. The windows don't meet code anymore. There's mold issues because of all of the flooding. These were they're all the result of the initial construction. It took almost 2 years to build this building because they kept running into structural problems. So obviously I love to save all the buildings. That is my whole profession to try to do that. But and not that this one necessarily couldn't be, but just to put out there that there are some actual legitimate concerns, and it's been empty for a long time. It currently just has 2 tenants taking up for the past couple of years, I think. So I'm not correct on that. But just to throw that out there, that while absolutely, in theory, a group could come in and could do that, there are some very expensive structural issues with the building as well.
Go
I got
ahead,
another
Coach
question. This is Commissioner Lyons.
Mhm.
So just kind of glancing through this document here that you guys are working on, I was kind of thinking, like, you know, in the table of contents, you know, you list a lot of let me see. I am kind of lost here. Let me try to pull that back up. Sorry. Well, what I noticed in the table of contents, like, you guys, you know, it is mentioned about, you know, all the, you know, the discrimination and the AIM movement during that time and stuff like that. You know, it's almost like, you know, with this being historical to Flagstaff, that maybe if there could be like a section that talks about the Native American population here, you know, like that's part of the history there. There was a powwow. There's, you know, maybe a summary at the end, because it's kind of extensive about what happened with the discrimination, for sure. Good to be noted. And then it just kind of ends. It looks like I didn't read the full thing, but just kind of scanning through it, like, I'm thinking, like, on a positive note, maybe a summary of like how our people are doing now in this community, because we're a big part in different sectors of, you know, of business, of the community, of being a workforce and stuff like that. But it you know, it'd be nice to just kind of have something out there that recognizes the Native people on their own section, you know what I mean? Because then when somebody's looking through there, they can, you know, the Native people are acknowledged, because I think we're under, like, maybe the history part there, you know, you have to scroll through it, but it's just an idea, you know, just kind of throwing it out there that, you know, the Native American population is a big part of Flagstaff, has been economically, and, you know, in a lot of different parts. Culturally, it brings a lot of culture to Flagstaff. So to have its own section in the table of contents would be good, where you can note all that. But, you know, I just kind of thought I'd throw that out there.
No, I think so I think or one of the things is that this document, you know, is to fulfill a city code, right? Which is why it's got all the history about all the things. And unfortunately, everything's a little bit limited. But I think that is a great point. When we keep talking about, like, a walking tour of QR codes, maybe having a pamphlet or a web page that we could link it along with this document, but to incorporate that, or maybe even a series of local history articles in, like, the Sun, or not just history, but I guess maybe Indigenous history from that point, but more focusing on it now. But doing a small series, maybe that would be an option. And maybe it'd get to more people than this report will, too.
For
Go
sure.
ahead.
Yeah, just something
Yeah,
I
I
just kind of
agree.
noticed. But yeah, it's a good idea. Just to have something there for Native peoples in that history. Thank you.
Chair Lance, I have a question. This is Councilmember Matthews.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm just curious, for the group that's on this call and having the discussion, is the desire to, what we've talked about today, preserving that history and making sure we don't forget that history and that time within Flagstaff, and is it to preserve the building?
It's the former. It's to talk about the significance of the building in association, with the AIM movement, and what would be the best interpretive mitigation to develop to, preserve and interpret that history. And that is specifically came about because, again, the Heritage Preservation Commission was charged with developing that mitigation and wanted to, and has developed other mitigation, but wanted to ask the Indigenous Commission specifically for feedback and establishing it there. So there is no formal role for, in requesting that the building, be preserved. That's outside the scope.
I understand that, but I was still wanting to hear, just on a personal level, personal desires, if that was important to the group that is online right now, outside of what we're here to talk about today. If I could just hear from them, whether in chat or just a real brief yay or nay, that it's important culturally to preserve the building, or it's more about just the history.
This is Commissioner
Oh,
Cuddy.
Can I
I'm sorry.
interrupt? Commissioner Marks has his hand up right now. And then you can go after that, Commissioner Cuddy.
Daryl, you're muted.
Okay. Sorry about
Yeah.
that. Councilwoman Matthews, I'll be quick. For me, it's the preservation of that history. And we have a videographer within our commission. They could probably help us in mapping out in the future what a video project could look like that documents all of the history, but also shares the important parts of our culture that Commissioner Lance is referring to, the things that we can celebrate, and then still maintaining that history. And maybe that's something that could be organized for the future, whether that's housed within the future business that will be there, or even video series that I know that the city is looking at with the Orpheum and its future. So with that, I'll step back.
Commissioner Cuddy.
I totally agree with Commissioner Marks. That's kind of my thought too. As long as there is some historical footprint of what has happened, I think I would be satisfied with that within the building. And that being an unsafe building, that in itself, I mean, I know that happens with old buildings. As much as how much we enjoy architecture, which I do, sometimes you just have to let it go. If it's not going to be a safe area in a safe building, I wouldn't want that to have any further issues with anybody there. So that's it.
If it's of interest, I can also give you a brief description of how that building where it's gone from when it was a city hall to what it is now, because that seems like that might be helpful. So we built the new city hall in 82, I believe, 81, 82. And the police department stayed in that building, which was part of the reason that they had so much history as well, right? Is that they were in the building the longest until about 2000. And then the city was going to tear it down and build a parking lot because the building had the flood issues and all of that. And so it remained empty for a little bit. And they decided it'd be more profitable to sell it to, privately than it would be to fix it or to turn it into a parking lot. And so it's been in private hands for about 15, 20 years. But it hasn't been, the building, as far as I know, and Lauren can correct me on that, the building has never been anywhere near full. You might have a business taking up a spot here, a spot here, there. And the reason that I bring that up is because that leads to not the best maintenance, right? The building assuming that it was maintained impeccably by the city until 2000, which probably not, but it wasn't in great condition when it was sold in private hands. And then for whatever reason, that building just hasn't seen a lot of use, so it hasn't seen as regular maintenance, even with the structural stuff, which has led to, I don't know if the building is unsafe. I just know that to get it up to code would be complicated because of a series, tens of years of not being used actively. And the fact that it was just kind of a catch-all for the city for a little bit, it was housed, like warehousing stuff. So I don't know if that helps for the why somebody is talking about tearing it down versus using the building as is, but hopefully that helps get a little context.
Thank you, Caitlin. And for me, it was as a council member, and we've heard different people's voices, talking about this building. I don't want to be the white person that doesn't have a history with this jail to decide, oh, this will make everybody happy, let's move forward with this. So it was really important for me to hear from the commission on, what they're looking for and what they'd like to see out of it. It's important to hear their voices because, I could consider one thing and think, wow, this is a really good idea and good plan, and it would clearly fall short of what was really important to our Native American community. So that's why I asked.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthews. That's, very helpful, question and feedback from the commission. And sorry, Rose. I also just I felt like Commissioner Marks, did you have an unrelated question before we started talking about this that you had your hand up for before that you still wanted to answer? Okay.
Okay, so this is Rose. I'm the staff liaison for the Indigenous Commission, and I just wanted to just wrap things up a little bit. So from what I understand, preserving history is priority with this group. And however that comes out in regarding input would be great. The building is not a priority because of it being in private hands and the difficulty of getting it to where it needs to be. And then also there seems to be two sections that commissioners have said, and that was it's important to highlight all of the areas that they talked about, one of them being American Indian movement and their assistance in getting I believe was the ACLU involvement in the treatment of Indigenous people in this area. And then two, the people who do live here and their history from this incident is also important coming forward into the future. And I think just the progress that has been made from the various points with involvement of other people, not just AIM, has been important in the progress of our people in this area. So, and then really also highlighting there's pros and cons to the powwow that was here in history, and that was one of the reasons why AIM interfered in that powwow event. And just distinguishing that would probably be important because one of the biggest things was, according to my understanding, that the powwow needs to be for and by the Indigenous people, meaning that it should be managed and run by Indigenous folks in planning that. And so that's one of the main reasons I think people have cons about it. And the pros would be just to make sure that it lands back in Indigenous hands and planning and those kinds of things with a lot of different partners that are willing to assist in this. So those are some of the things that I understood from with this conversation. And I think just having those segments in QR codes would be great. And I really how appreciate Amy being part of this discussion, because I think that just having a trail from the parks, Thorpe Park area where the powwow used to be, coming this way down to the area where the building is going to be, but also including for people right now who are living here, including the future Indigenous Community Cultural Center that has been one of the main asks of Indigenous people for a very long time. So those are some things that I gathered from just the discussion. And then I guess we'll go ahead and see if we can wrap this up so we can get on to our next agenda item if possible. Chair?
So
Got it.
I think I can help. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Caitlin. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think I can help wrap this up, because part of what we're doing here, right, is that we need to come up with something to present to the Heritage Commission. It sounds like there is some decent support of the idea of a walking tour, especially if we can get it to, and I think it's a great idea to have it start talking about the Indian powwow history and end at the new cultural center. I think it addresses, from my perspective, addresses some of the concerns about, we're not just trying to focus on, obviously we're trying to preserve history, but there has and will continue to always be an Indigenous community here. So ending at the cultural center might be good. So I wonder if that is something that the commission would support, in that I could come up with some ideas, and I'll probably reach out to you more than you'd like. Come up with a framework for that you guys could then look at and have input, like a direct thing. Would that be helpful? Because that's kind of where we'll have to end up with the commission, is I'll have to present them with somewhat of a plan. But if we have an idea of which avenue you guys would like the best, then I can start working on that in cooperation with some of you and some of the people who work here, and maybe have more of a plan to give you, as opposed to. But if there's something else that people would prefer, just let me know and I can come up with a different plan.
Sounds good. Looks like Commissioner Francis has a question.
Commissioner Francis. Caitlin, what exactly, can you clarify again that you're proposing? What are you saying? One more time. Or that you're put together.
No problem. It's been a lot of conversation. So we had a couple of ideas. I think the ones that would be pretty easy, that that the commission seems to appreciate and the client shouldn't have an issue with, would be doing some sort of walking tour with plaques and QR codes. So it'd be a trail. It doesn't necessarily have to start at the Hilton or where the old City Hall was, but incorporating where that building was, maybe something about or in Thorpe, some other buildings downtown. And then I like the idea of, it seems like a great idea, having it incorporated into the urban trail network. And ending at the community center. I don't have, because we're still talking about this abstractly, I don't have a set of buildings quite in mind. So like a route per se, but I was thinking about, or I think that with QR codes at each stop, but also either photos or a plaque, because again, I'm not going to use a QR code either. I like the idea, but and that QR code would not just lead to more information, but the ability for people to participate, and would link probably to thinking about this as I go, lead to a web page which people could also visit without the QR code and participate or send things into. That could be incorporated into it. And the other piece of that would be maybe having a physical pamphlet that people could maybe pick up at City Hall. We've done that before. So if people wanted to go on this walking tour and wanted a little more information outside of just the plaques and didn't want to use the QR codes, there would be all those options for them to get that information. It's kind of how I would see it working.
I wanted to ask quickly if this building does go for demolition, the materials used, are some of those materials going to be reinserted into a new building?
That is part of the mitigation that the commission has asked for. I know Lauren and I have had a little bit of experience at this, and sometimes those materials, because this is a facade, don't hold up. But the look at minimum will be. So there will be some of that Malpai basalt in it, in the facade, as, you know, a bit of an homage. But as far as the actual materials, it'll just depend on the quality once it's, we don't know if it's going to hold up.
Okay.
But it'll be represented.
I agree with some of the commissioners that had mentioned that, you know, the preservation, the history of this time is very important. The building, for me, on a traditional level, there were so many bad things probably happening in a police station. Death, dying, murders, cuts, whatever. And so within that building holds all of that energy. So for it to finally be released, and I don't know how these new owners are gonna decide to honor it, or if not, but it'd be something that would be good to see, to erase all that memory and history of negativity. That's something that is I know happens with buildings, especially older buildings, in that way. But that's my contribution I'd like to share with the commission and with you, Caitlin.
That makes perfect sense. And I mean, to some extent I'd considered it, but I guess my question would be, so there isn't necessarily a preference from this commission for that old building to just be put on display, like using the materials again, or is there?
In that case, then whatever is salvageable and it would be then have to get a prayer re-blessed just in a good way to remove all that
Before
stuff, to reinsert it into a new building normally.
Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. And like I said, I don't know if they actually will, but I will make sure to let the designer know, and I'm sure he'd have no issue with that if they ended up using some of the materials.
And it is hard because you're dealing with a private owner, and that's what's so complicated in telling them what to do with their property that they just bought, I suppose. And it's, you know, I thank you for coming to us for our input, but at the same time, it feels almost like we're giving you this information, but will anything actually, you know, can come of it? And hopefully it will. But that's, you know, those are the things that we're also trying to understand here. So I appreciate everybody who's commented today. Thank you.
And I will say, for whatever it means, and I don't say this very often, because obviously I'm a private contractor. They contract us to do this, to basically just do, you know, to look into history of anything. And it's not just buildings. It could be, you know, we do a lot of primarily surveys, things like that. I do get the impression, because this client's whole interest is to be, or, you know, the chain is about incorporating history and the community. They seem very interested and willing to take these things into consideration. Obviously, it hasn't happened yet, but I think that there'll be some success in getting some of these things implemented.
And I will say, I mean, some of them will. This is absolutely required. Whatever the commission votes on, you know, I will not be able to approve. You know, building permits, the site plan, they will not be able to move forward until they complete these requirements. I mean, so some things maybe are asks and are not going to be the required mitigation, but like, for example, the like reuse or of existing or new Malapai stone, that is something they, you know, are going to be required to do. And when they come in for with their site plan, they're going to have to show us exactly where it is and what they're doing, and the Heritage Preservation Commission will see that and will approve it. So, you know, so some of these things definitely, you know, they will have to do. There are other things that are harder, right? Like asking them, like I love the idea of them showing some of the old powwow footage, you know, but will we be able to ensure that the hotel does that for the rest of time? I mean, no, because, you know, we can't ongoing monitor that they're still going to do that. So in some ways it is like a more brick and mortar thing, is easier to make sure it's in place and that it continues through that it'll be more long lasting. And with that, Commissioner Lomombaya, did you want to share your comments?
Yeah, I know we're trying to wrap up. I'm sorry, Rose. I just wanted to ask one last question. I mean, I do think it's important to include what you can of the architecture because it's such a, I don't know, for me, it's a specific architectural scheme for Flagstaff, the Mount High Rock, having it in a lot of the historic buildings around town. Growing up here, that's very much like part of part of the architectural history and style of Flagstaff. But I also was wondering who, in terms of the hotel putting up historical images of the building when it gets built and kind of providing some context and history and information like that, who would they be consulting in that process of getting information and putting that up and selecting photos and things like that?
I think right now, Cornerstone, as their consultant, is the lead for that. So if you have other suggestions of places that Caitlin and Cornerstone should check in, and then generally what happens when we develop these mitigation measures is they have to come back for final approval, and the Heritage Preservation Commission usually stipulates, like, the Heritage Preservation Officer, who is me, can have final sign off on, the final text, design, etc., or maybe it needs to go back to the Heritage Preservation Commission for final sign off. So that will be built into whatever their approval is. So, and that could be, something that you recommend is that, the Indigenous Commission, see the final, designed product before and have a chance to comment on it, before it's signed off on.
Yeah, I think that would be good as part of the building to have that.
Yeah, we can put that in our recommendations.
Okay.
Absolutely, that we'll provide a primary selection of photos, materials, or whatever. But that we would ask for contributions from the commission as well as approval of what those final are.
Okay, thank you.
Lauren, would that mean you'd have to come back to the commission, the Indigenous Commission, to provide that final design, or does the Indigenous commissioners have to attend a heritage preservation meeting?
Either or. I mean, I would assume you would all prefer that, when if that's the recommendation and what the commission votes on, that Caitlin and I or me would bring it to both commissions for review.
Got it. I believe, is that all the questions we have for Caitlin and Lauren today? I think so. I know Rose wanted to move on. So thank you both, Caitlin Stewart and Lauren Clementino, for sharing all that info.
Chair, I think they need to have
Rose?
at least, I think they need at least to have a direction, right, Lauren? Do we need to vote on the items that was presented?
From if what Caitlin just presented, that we move forward with, developing kind of an interpretive walk that's going to include at least the old City Hall building and Thorpe Park with other destinations, and develop interpretive signage physically at those locations, with QR codes. That's the path we're hearing we're going to move forward with, recommending to the commission, with the recommendation that the final design come back to this commission to see before it's signed off on. If there is other mitigation of all of the other ideas that were thrown out that you want to add to that, I think, please let us know now. Otherwise, we'll move forward with presenting that.
Okay. I think, I think we need to vote on that. And I think that we also So I'll give it back to you, Chair, to get that vote.
Okay, I guess all members of the commission that are in favor of moving forward with this vote,
You need a
say aye,
motion.
or
You need a
oh, we
motion.
need a motion to. I'm sorry, it's kind of throwing me off right now. Can we get a motion to approve? Everyone say aye.
You need a motion and a second and then a vote.
Okay. Sorry. So we're gonna need a motion and a second. Does anybody motion?
I'll motion.
Okay. Commissioner Moana, do we got a second?
I'll second the motion. This is Commissioner Hosty.
Okay, great. And we all have to approve? Say aye,
Aye.
please.
Aye.
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 Any
Thank you.
opposed? Any opposed?
Any opposed? Okay. All right, looks like none opposed. So we'll move on to the next agenda. Thank you, Lauren and Caitlin, for all the information you shared today.
Thank you. And I'll let you guys know, or I'll pass it on to Lauren who the artist is once I get that info. But I appreciate your time and thank you very much.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the October 2nd, 2025 Indigenous Commission meeting. Staff Liaison Tohi will be attending a conference during the week of September 29th through October 3rd. IC to consider moving the meeting to the following week, October 9th, or leave as is. So I think moving to the 9th would be fine.
Okay. I just need a
Yeah.
motion, a second, and a vote.
I'll motion, Commissioner Lance.
I will second Commissioner Lamont Vaya.
Okay, thank you. And then a vote.
Vote to approve.
Aye.
Aye.
Everyone say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Any opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, for time's sake, we only have 6 minutes right now.
Okay, got it. So we'll move on to discussion items. Event planning update, Indigenous Peoples Day, October 13th, 2025. The planning work group will provide an overall update on what has been established and what tasks are still pending. I'm not sure if that's going to be you, Rose, that's going to update us, or if that was Mariah.
It'll be me and Cheryl, Commissioner Francis. And this will be a real quick one, but we're gonna, opening session is gonna be at 9 o'clock. And right now our venue is at the Elks Lodge. And we have pretty much the morning session covered, which would be land acknowledgement, and then also the prayer. There's a couple things that are still pending, like our MC, and then just a couple other things regarding that area. But we have our keynote speaker that is confirmed, and she is Danae Mayor Garland from Tempe. She's going to be our keynote speaker. And then we are deciding on the four business panelists that we're going to have. I know that the young Whitethorn artist is for sure. Jalen Whitethorn is pretty much in. And then we have a few others that we're looking to say yes or no on that. And I want to also just, one of the ones that has been, Charlie, can I turn to you for the other person that you were wanting to introduce?
Actually, I tried to leave him a message and I went by his house, or I went by his business. Sheldon, I left you a message yesterday and you would be considered to be a part of our business panel. Yes, AccuStat tax accounting. So I had you because I worked with you on getting my fingerprint card. Remember that a couple months ago? And I was like, oh wow, this is your small business. So it's so interesting that you're here. And thank you for showing up. If you're interested, please get back with me. So we have a panel. Just to clarify, the title of this event is, the theme is From Policy to Prosperity, Indigenous Leadership in a Changing Landscape. That is the theme of this year's Indigenous Peoples Day. Again, from policy to prosperity, Indigenous leadership in a changing landscape.
Sorry about that. I skipped all over all that. Thanks. Thanks, Commissioner Francis. And then, yeah, just get back with us, Sheldon, regarding, and Sheldon's business is, what's your business called?
Hey there, I'm actually AccuStrat Tax. I'm located here on Stevens and 66. I didn't actually know that you had contacted me, Shirley, but that's pretty cool that decided to come here today.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for just joining us.
Again.
Oh, and then
just to clarify, he also creates your fingerprint cards if you need for students and staff and teachers and the state, federal stuff. He does the whole background check. That's his business, part of it.
All right. And then we're going to have another speaker after the business panel, and we're confirming that one as well. We have feelers out for that. And then after that, we're going to have our traditional meal. And and then we're going to have, right now, I'm in contact with Powwow Jam out of NAU, and hopefully they'll provide the cultural share. Just doing their exhibition dances and explaining what each of them represent in their regalia. So that's what we're hopeful that would be okay with them, especially now that NAU is back in session. We'll see how that goes. If anybody else has any ideas around that, let us know. Please email me with whoever's contacts you have around that cultural shares. So anyway, that's what our plan is for right now. Mariah's not here. She's over at the Anti-Hunger Summit or conference, and she's also getting some contacts over there as well. Any questions so far?
Rose, I think we were still just really emphasizing the cultural share group in case we need a backup because of the youth that are performing. It might not be a good day since they take that day off also, or something, So if you have any other suggestions for the cultural share group, dance performers, that would help us out greatly.
Yes, thank you. That's all we have right now. And then we're now out of time, and I'll give it back to co-chair.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that info. Item 7, informational items, 2 from commission members, staff, and future agenda item requests. Anybody have anything to share from the commission? Okay. All right. Thanks, Sheldon.
There's
Commissioner Marks. Sorry.
So the Housing Solutions did a presentation last night at City Hall. I had asked that they come to the commission to share some of that information for any families that want to learn how to become homeowners here in Flagstaff, and to learn about all of the different funding sources that are there for folks that are looking to take that journey into becoming homeowners here in Flagstaff. So I met with them last night. I will pass the information on to Mrs. Rose to see if we can schedule a time for them to come and do a presentation with us.
Okay, that sounds good. Other thoughts is we could have like a community forum or something, maybe in the spring or something. That would be nice because we're packed with fall things right now. Lauren?
Just to follow up on what I mentioned earlier, I'm going to throw in the chat the link to apply to be on a board or commission. We do have a Heritage Preservation Commission immediate vacancy, currently vacant, need to fill as soon as we can. And then we will have 2 more appointments that are up on December 1st. So really, we're looking for applications for 3 positions now through the fall. So if you know of anyone, it would be wonderful to have more diverse voices on the Heritage Preservation Commission. There are professional seats as well as at-large seats and historic property owner seats. So the one that's currently vacant is at-large, so you don't have to be a professional or a historic property owner. Just have an interest in heritage preservation.
That sounds
Commissioner
great.
Francis, I heard, I seen your hand up earlier.
Yes, real quick. I wanted to announce that coming up next month, working with a few other community members here in Flagstaff and along with the support from the city and Rose, we're going to put on a first event called Voices Unheard, Breaking the Silence, a community gathering for prevention, strength, and healing on October 22nd at the Center for Coconino Center for the Arts. It'll be from 8:30 to 3:30. It's a grassroots committee that came together to address the prevention, education, and awareness to start informing and helping our local residents here in Northern Arizona. And this effort is to highlight prevention, which is a really important precursor to the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives movement. So coming up in the next meeting, I can share more details. But before that date, on the 20th and the 21st, we're going to have some film screenings that we're working to put together. One will be with hopefully the filmmakers of the again, the Hulu series, Crimes from the Paranormal, episode 6, Ramon Emerson and Alex Lazarowicz, who are the co-directors, native filmmakers who put that together, a Q&A panel. On the Tuesday, the 21st, will be a film called She Cried That Day by Amanda Erickson, and that's on the MMIP movement also. So I just wanted to share this leading up to the 22nd and support with the city and from the county. They're really, we're getting traction on putting this together. So hopefully I can get some support from this commission also if you're interested, trying to get the word out and get people to sign up for this event. So that's what I have to share for now.
Great. Does anybody else have anything to share?
Cuddy, September 30th is Every Child Matters, and wear orange. That's it.
Yes, ma'am.
And thank you, Commissioner Marks, for throwing the regional plan upcoming public hearings in the chat, the regional plan website, which the public hearing draft of the plan is now on the website. So and the commission provided comments on the last draft of the plan. So it's live if you want to go check it out and see how comments were addressed. Yes, and hopefully everyone received the postcard in the mail with the QR code and all of the dates of the public hearings. But there are yeah, 2 upcoming Planning and Zoning Commission public hearings next Wednesday, and then at the Aquaplex, and then the 24th at City Hall, and then assuming Planning and Zoning sends it on to City Council, there's a special City Council meeting on October 9th. So thank you, Commissioner Marks, for sharing all those things. And if anyone has specific questions, I'm happy to try and answer them.
That's great, Commissioner Marks. Thank you. And thank you, Shirley.
Sorry. And I should say that there is also on the website a response to comments. So the comments that were provided, you can actually go check out the spreadsheet. And I believe Commissioner Lomoambaya was the one who nicely compiled everything for the commission. So you can actually go in there and check and see. So if you want specific follow-up.
Okay, I think if nobody else has anything to share, we can go ahead and adjourn the meeting. It's September 4th, 12:38. I'd like to officially adjourn the Indigenous Commission meeting. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
See y'all later.
Stay.
Always just you and me, Rose.
Oh, hold on.